Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. In this episode, I visit with Mimi Lam, CEO and co-founder of cannabis retailer Superette, and their soon-to-be-open Toronto store. We explore their award-winning brand and retail concept, lessons learned from a fast-paced first year with their store in Ottawa, and what lies ahead for this innovative retailer. Next, the one and only Bruce Linton, founder and former chairman and chief executive officer at Canopy Growth Corporation, the cannabis company he started in 2012 and grew to an organization with a market cap of $20 billion with $5 billion in the bank. We meet at the Restaurant Canada show in Toronto just before he was interviewed on the main stage and talk about our shared paths from Carleton University in Ottawa, lessons learned, the road ahead, and what he would do as a Canadian cannabis czar. But first, let's jump right into my conversation with Mimi from Superette. Mimi, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Well, the last time you and I saw each other, actually the first time we met, you were coming off the high of winning at the Lift & Co. Awards. You had done so well, so congratulations on those again. That's the first time you and I met, and it was kind of backstage, and it was really fun.
Yeah.
Since I've had the chance to go visit the store and experience Superette for myself. But let's... we'll get into some of that later, but let's just jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal, professional journey, and how you came to do what you do today.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to. So, I can take it all the way back. So, I'm actually from Ottawa, born and raised.
Fantastic.
Spent most of my life there, went to Carleton University, and my professional career began a few years ago. I was in the finance stream at school, and so I ended up on Bay Street doing investment banking for a few years. And while I was there, cannabis legalization was coming around the corner, and it was an industry that I found really, really interesting. And so really, really quickly, over a few years, I jumped from essentially mining investment banking to doing corporate development for a really neat Toronto-based cannabis brand called Tokyo Smoke. And so there, I was doing strategy and corporate development, helped with everything from navigating the regulatory landscape from coast to coast, expanding the retail strategy for the Tokyo Smoke banner, to taking it public and selling it to Canopy, and got to really see the cannabis industry grow up as it moved from a full medical system to an adult use system, and to see the regulations play out that way. And fast forward, a year and a half there, come the end of the summer of 2018, and I was kind of hit with a crossroads, and I could either stay in Canopy or I could branch out to do something on my own. And so that's where Superette's story began, September 2018.
So interesting. So, Superette is such an interesting brand. It's very carefully crafted retail brand. So for the listeners who haven't experienced it, you've got one store in Ottawa, so that would probably be the majority of people. Walk us through what the brand is. Tell us a little bit about the store, and then how you came to that and those decisions. I'm really intrigued by, it's a very particular objective and a very particular merchandising. So tell us the story, so to speak, around Superette.
Yeah, for sure. We actually started Superette with a very clear vision in mind. At that point, taking you back to September 2018, there were already other cannabis retail concepts across Canada.
Sure.
And so we really wanted to bring something that was really fun and accessible and could speak to different demographics. And the way we wanted to do that was draw from, traditional retail concepts that were innately familiar. So Superette as a name and some of the inspiration for even the visual identity came from your neighborhood convenience store, from bodegas, from flower shops. And we thought that was a fun approach to cannabis retail. Taking it to the retail concept and where we've been able to bring it to life, we wanted to draw on those elements in a very, very playful way. And so for those who haven't been to Superette, imagine yourself walking down the street. It's Wellington Street West in Ottawa, and it's a really neat area. So if you're, based in Toronto or something, call it close to Queen West.
Yep.
So cool restaurants, retail around, and you hit this corner. It's really, really bright. You see the Superette logo. It doesn't look automatically like a cannabis store, but it's a nice, playful area. You walk in, you get your ID checked, and as soon as you walk in, you see a lot of products and a lot of people and a great vibe where you can explore and really discover cannabis, whether it be the cannabis products themselves or accessories. And we would use things like deli cases or playful French fry trays to really play into how customers can interact with these products.
I visited visited and spent some time with Bailey at the store, and it, I love visiting stores of all types. And when I walked in, that was my experience. And one of your people handed me a menu, and the menu is like, oh, this looks like a diner's menu, but it was all of the different flowers, and really people make a big difference in cannabis retail. They do in all retail. And I think one of your bud tenders actually was one of the winners at the Lift & Co. Awards. So how and where do you look for those people that fit that brand? I mean, you've got a very specific idea of what your brand should look like and act like. Mm-hmm. So I guess that goes into when you think about the people that are going to be in the store as well, right?
For sure. People is everything. Ultimately, the company and the brand is only as strong as the people who are in it. And so we spend a lot of time training our bud tenders and making sure that they carry the same values and culture as we do at headquarters of Superette. And so when we look at those people, we have a huge emphasis on passion for cannabis, the industry and the product, and also passion for customer service. At the end of the day, we are a customer service business, and we're here to empower customers that walk through the door. And we have to do that in a very friendly and approachable way. The unique thing about cannabis relative to a lot of the other industries is that there's still a lot of education to be done, and it's such a personal product to each single person. And so the effects, the desired outcome for everyone is actually very different and diverse, but that's also kind of fun.
Right on. So we're not in your Ottawa store right now. In fact, there's a bit of an echo behind us. Tell us where we are today. Where are we sitting on milk crates with a bit of water? You're such a great host.
You're welcome. I hope you're enjoying this experience. We are sitting at 1073 Yonge Street in Toronto. It's in the Summerhill area of Toronto, and this will be our first flagship store in the city. Superette is looking to expand. Our goal is 10 operating stores within the next 12 to 18 months. There has been a change in the Ontario retail legislation, which allows us to expand beyond the first Ottawa store. And we really wanted to show up in the Toronto market in a very impactful way. So 1073, again, you can kind of hear the echo. Right now, it's a blank, empty spot. It's just over 3,000 square foot of beautiful, boxy space. It used to be a flagship root store. And what we will do is really be playful in bringing the Superette identity to Toronto.
So, a year or whatever is a lifetime in this business. Being in the cannabis business always reminds me of that famous Mike Tyson quote, everybody's got a plan till I punch him in the nose. So you must have learned a lot of things from running your cannabis store. Ontario has now opened it up. That's a huge milestone. I mean, the first time we talked, I said, what's ahead for Superette? And you're like, we want to open more stores. So now you've got the kind of runway to do that within the framework, at least certainly in Ontario. Tell me a little bit about what lessons you've learned from running the one store that maybe was a bit of a surprise. So you're not a retail veteran; you were on the investment side. So retail operations, was something a little new to you. Yeah. So anything that kind of, I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah. Good or not so good. And then what lessons perhaps are you going to take away from that experience in the store in Ottawa and put into the flagship here in Toronto and then the other stores that you open up?
For sure. Yeah, good question. I mean, as you said, I kind of jumped into the deep end, and I've learned an incredible amount over the last year. Some key lessons that really stick out to me is, your back of house is just as important as your front of house. I think it's really important to think about the interactions with customers and your frontline staff. But the honesty is your back of house operations need to be efficient. They need to run properly because that has a huge impact with how the team functions and how the ultimate customer experience will end up being. So that was something that we've had to really hone in on things like inventory management and things and really making sure that it's a clean experience from beginning to the end. So that was one thing that really stuck out to me. I would say the connection between headquarters and the store unit itself is really, really critical, and is going to be even more critical as we open more units. So for those who don't know, our corporate head office is based in Toronto, but the store is in Ottawa. So as a first unit, there was a bit of distance there, and so that's always difficult.
There's an old saying in retail, there's no cash registers at head office, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and when you think about a brand as new as us, it's not like we've we've built the playbook yet.
Right.
And so making sure that the culture and the values transcend that distance, and making sure that the frontline staff can communicate back to us what's working, what's not, what they need. That is going to be paramount as we open more stores. And I think another piece that I really had to learn over this last year is just how quickly things change in the cannabis industry specifically. Sure. Retail and mixed with cannabis is a whole new ballgame.
It's a different thing, right?
It's a different thing, and we all have to be really malleable. And so I think we're at a point where it's not about building that perfect playbook. It's making sure you're building the right foundation so we can, flex into those areas where we need to.
And I've talked to retail veterans who have gotten into the retail cannabis space, and they would say the same thing, right? I mean, retail's fast moving. If you're a veteran operator, something say the same, but retail cannabis is a very different animal, so to speak. And it's funny, I think when we all look back 5-10 years from today, it's almost like by force in Ontario, you kind of had to measure twice and cut once.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't open more than one store. They really, there wasn't a lot of stores. So I guess in some ways it allowed us all to take some time and understand what's going to work and what's not going to work in a pretty new space, right?
Yeah, it was a great testing ground. We were all really, really bummed out that we can only open one store.
Yeah.
But the silver lining of that is we had the real opportunity to
get it right,
Exactly.
right? To get it right.
And so even I would say between April 1st, 2019, when the store opened till now, the experience has completely changed.
Well, okay, let's talk about that. So it's a great segue into that. Okay,
yeah.
What have you done differently even there that you're going to do in all your stores, or what do you do different than you did day one, and what are you going to do different in the new stores?
Yeah, so day one, we frankly opened based on timelines. So there was a first day that the stores could open, and we rushed for that date. And so we built everything up within 2 months.
Wow.
So that was build out, hiring, training, systems implementation, inventory management, the whole shebang.
Not easy to open a retail cannabis store either. It's complex, right? There's a lot of moving parts.
Exactly. And so that was a rush. And so a lot of things we kind of just made it up as we went along. And so over time, what we've done, everything from the customer experience side and how the customer interacts with the budtenders and the flow when you enter into the store and how they line up, that has been improved. How the inventory and back of house fulfillment works, that has been improved. And just cleaning up the visual aspect of it as well. We've redone the tiling of the walls. We've included new shelving bays, and those extra elements and those attention to the details are the things that we obsess over. And it's the constant feedback loop between the store and head office that allows us to make those changes that we know that the customers are going to want to see and want.
It's interesting because you've got kind of two dominant visual cues in the store. You've got the flower component, and then you've got the diner component, right?
Yeah.
And I guess if you're not careful, they start to compete with each other.
Exactly.
One overwhelms the other. So finding the balance, right, between those two visuals. Let's talk about merchandising. So have you learned anything about how to merchandise the product? When I was in your store in Ottawa, it was really fun. It was back in early December, and there was a cooler with painted cans that looked like they were just Coke or pop, but they looked like it's coming.
Yeah.
Cannabis 2.0 is coming. So you really put some thought into merchandising. Anything that you think you learned from how to merchandise the product already that's in deli containers, which makes it stand out a little bit differently from other cannabis stores?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first and foremost, we like to have fun. Like at the end of the day, we are dealing with cannabis products. It's a product that could be very fun for people, and I think a lot of the retailers that opened up kind of lost that, and they lost the humanity of cannabis, and we wanted to bring that back in a really, really impactful way. And so from a merchandising standpoint, what we wanted to do from that angle was to bring more traditional visual merchandising cues and fundamentals into cannabis retail. And so more likely than not, you can enter any other cannabis retail store and you have low value accessories encased behind a glass box. And that's how they merchandise accessories across the board. From our perspective, Why do we need to do that? Don't really understand why. And so at Superette, what we try to do is really challenge what is considered the norm for cannabis retail. And so whether that be merchandising, which for the people who haven't been in store, we like to merchandise in bulk. We want to make sure that people can look and see and feel and really interact with the product before being able to buy them with the products that they can, of course. And things like scent pods, how are those being laid out and what's the customer's interaction with that? We really want to push those buttons and push the boundaries of how to create these great experiences with products that might not be as accessible in other storefronts.
Let's talk about Cannabis 2.0 products. So we're recording this, you may not be listening to it now, but we're recording this in March, so Cannabis 2.0 products are starting to roll out.
Yeah.
How important are they in your mind to your business and to the customers and, of course, to making ground on the black market? And just what role do you think those are going to play? And I guess kind of a follow-up question is how do you envision merchandising those? Because now you get to make decisions around merchandising, right?
Yeah.
In the early days, I'll just take what you got.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're starting to say, okay, what am I going to stand for from a merchandising perspective, both from flower and from new products? So give me a bit of your insight around thinking about 2.0 and how it merchandises in the store and where you think you're going to win with that.
Totally. Yeah, the introduction of new products is so important for this entire industry. For us as a business and frankly for everyone else who are playing in this space, the reason why it's important is because customers consume cannabis differently. People have different desires for different product formats. And so from our standpoint, this is our opportunity to give them what they want and also to be a little bit more fun. And so we're only beginning to see what the rollout of these 2.0 products look like. And
you've got some in the Ottawa store already,
yeah? We have some. We have vape pens, we have gummies, edibles, some chocolates, some teas, but beverages haven't started yet. The full extent of what the edibles and vape line products are not yet out. Topicals aren't out yet. And so there's a lot of room for those products to expand. And to your point about merchandising, between new products coming online and more stores coming online, this is where retailers really get to define what their curation is, what their mix is, and really stand for what the offering is and want to provide to customers. Before, everyone was kind of like a convenience store. Everyone had everything. That's no longer going to be the case. You'll see a lot of refinement over the next 12 months, and people will have to have very unique and niche experiences. I
mean, ultimately, you're all going to have to answer the same questions that conventional retailers do, which is why come to me?
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's going to be very much the case in cannabis retail. Why would I drive past 3 cannabis stores to go to your store? If the assortment's the same, then what's going to be different? I guess A, the experience is going to be different, and B, maybe the assortment over time is going to be different. You might want to stand for something different than your competitors, right?
Yeah, for sure. And in an ideal world, retailers will be able to make direct relationship with suppliers, and we can have exclusive products. We can have in-house branded products. There's a lot that we see happen below in the U.S. states in the legal markets, and we can't wait for something like that to develop from a regulatory framework wise in Ontario.
Well, typically I'd ask what's next, but I think we already know what's next. We're standing in what's next. It's a wonderful space, by the way. It's already got a great vibe, and it's just wide open, and I kind of can see where it's going. So more stores in Toronto. If people want to learn more about the brand, experience it, where do they get in touch with you, or how do they experience the brand?
Yeah, people can always check us out online. We are at www.superetteshop.com. Also on Twitter and Instagram at superette_shop, and you can also find us on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, Mimi, thanks for being my guest on The Voice of Retail. It's great to catch up and chat with you, and I wish you much success, and excited to see you in Toronto and beyond for 2020.
Yeah, thank you for the chat. Can't wait to catch up in a few months again.
Bruce, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. Hanging out with you is not bad.
Well, it's great to meet you in person. As I said off mic, we have something in common. We're both Carleton University alumni, so go Carleton University?
You know, I think when we went there, my criteria is they would let me. I didn't. The threshold of participating in the university for me was, would you let me in? And they did.
Well, you know what they say about Carleton, and I think to some degree it's true. Easy to get into, hard to get out of.
Right.
Because the qualifications and the education you get are great, but they have a little more policy accessible. Helped me, let me tell you.
Helped me.
It set me off. So listen, you and I, your paths and mine diverged a little bit after that. So tell, for the listeners who may not know of you and your story, give us a little bit of your personal, professional journey up to and including Tweed, which people might know now as Canopy.
So I grew up Southern Ontario, rural, kind of small farm. I went to Carleton because I'd been on a youth exchange program, which I would love if I could run Canada. Everyone between the ages of 17 and 21 would go somewhere and experience a different way of thinking and come back.
Like the Peace Corps that was started in the late 60s-ish in the States.
Canada World Youth was considered phenomenal. Continued to look pretty good. Anyhow, I did that. When I got back, I went, well, I guess I should go to university because prior to that I had not planned to. And when you don't plan to go to university, that thing called homework is not something you do. And so I went to Carleton, took 6 years to do a 4-year degree. Had to remind everybody that it was an education, not a race, because I was getting often questioned about when will you graduate. And then the time of being there, I explored every topic I could find.
Right.
Like, I mean, from the Peace and Disarmament Working Committee group to being the only blonde-haired guy in the Afro-Caribbean Club for 3 years. And I really found it was interesting to just be involved.
And you were in the student council.
I ran the Students
well, right? Association,
because, if you're the president of the Students Association, they can't kick you out of the bar even if you behave poorly. Because I saw the guy, the year I was the first year, who was the president, who was really behaving badly, and he didn't get thrown out. So I thought, good job for me. But I did all that stuff, and including being on the Board of Governors, which is kind of like the Board of Directors for a university.
Sure.
And when I was there, I sort of watched, I thought about a third of the people on the board felt universities would have run better if it weren't for all the students and the shit they cause, which is a bizarre thing. It's a bit like saying if our customers weren't so troublesome, we'd have a better business.
Right on.
And there was a guy named Sir Terence Matthews who was on the board, and he
Mitel, right?
Yeah, Mitel, Newbridge, and about 99 other big companies.
Sure.
And so at the end of my last meeting, he said, would you come out and talk to us? Maybe you should work here. I went and joined because of him, and it was something that made techie stuff, multiplexers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
but
I remember.
Really, everything can be thought of simply. And so what I liked about that experience was to take a very technical product set and say, how simply is it? What does it do? Well, what it did was allow people who ran businesses to move data fast, never get it lost, have backup systems so if somebody cut a big line one way, you could go another way around.
Yeah.
And because
now we're talking the 90s here, so very far ahead of its time.
Deregulation occurred. Everybody had to fight with everybody. It was before all these startups. So I went there for that. And I learned tech. And what tech means is scale. And so I would say that Canopy, to fast forward to that, Tweed, when it started, was probably a tech company that produced cannabis more than a cannabis company that used tech.
Well, you certainly scaled it. I mean, last I checked, it was $60 billion, $5 billion in the bank when you were there last year.
Only $20 billion.
Only $20 billion?
Yeah, so it
only
went,
$20 billion.
In a period of 6 years, the company went from one site, one person, to 4,000 people, 16 countries, 31 acquisitions.
Wow.
Had $5 billion in the bank-ish, and market cap of around $20 billion.
Right.
But then I got fired, so clearly there's some lessons to be learned there by me.
Well, that's a good segue. Let's talk about when you're trying to scale a company and scaling a company the way you did. Talk about the culture. Culture trumps strategy. What kind of culture do you set up when you're hiring that fast and growing a company?
It is almost always overlooked, and people talk about culture. Like we went to the point where it developed, and we thought about it and did certain things. Like everybody in the company got equity, meaning if you're cleaning the floor or the VP, you all got equity, and it wasn't directly in proportion to your salary. But then we had a whole bunch of things. Like, for example, in all the communities, I didn't allow anybody to have a construction of a building that included a food service. So, well, why no food service?
So to help the community, right? To get your people into the community.
Use them as a supply chain, not a competitor.
Right on.
And so we kept pushing things like that, and we started having...
we did wonderful things for the city of Smith Falls, right? I mean, you really turned that city around.
We turned it around, but like in a lot of places like Niagara. So what we did is I actually got about 140 people from all walks of the company to spend quite a bit of time over a 2-month period to codify what is our culture. And then it came down to 8 principles. So one of them was like, catch people doing good. Because a lot of times workplaces are rat. Get shit done. And then it would explain what these meant. And so the effect was that even when I departed, I felt the culture was sufficiently embedded that the momentum would continue. And so it's not just about short-term success. I think it's about durability.
So, as you said, you've exited from Canopy. What are you up to now? What's your perspective from your viewpoint on the global cannabis state of things in the global cannabis in the world outside of Canada?
So kind of two questions there. I'm involved in a bunch of things. So I like things where the rules are going to change and that public policy has been the primary impediment to opportunity. So a company tomorrow should list on the Canadian exchange called MindMed. And what MindMed is, how do you take these ingredients called psychedelics that are prohibited by law and actually turn them into science to see if they can do something better for the state of a person's mental health than all the other stuff we currently use? It's not great.
Right.
I like that. I like a bunch of marijuana companies because I try to pick ones that are not medical, not rec, but science. Because all good products have to come from differentiation, and differentiation has to usually follow to invention.
Right.
And so I've been very big on animal care, on multi-state operators, and then I spent quite a bit of time with a software company called Ruckify. And what Ruckify does is it recognizes that we've all bought a lot of stuff and we use it for about an hour a year, and then it sits in our garage, basement, or cupboard. And Ruckify allows Uber or Lyft come by, pick it up at my house. You use my Mixmaster stepladder, power washer, crutches, whatever you need, and they get delivered back to me. You and I have set the price, so I might say it's $10 to use my power washer, $11 to use my stepladder, and it's insured so that if you wreck it, I get a new one. If you fall off it, I don't have a problem. And so we're just launching in Austin in April. And the reason I'm doing that one is, you have kids and then kids wake your brain up again. And what woke mine up was that we own all kinds of stuff that's environmentally super destructive. Like an aluminum ladder is actually caused by digging a huge hole, taking a whole bunch of ferrous material out, smelting it, which means melting it, shipping it to China, rolled so they can make it into an aluminum ladder, loading on a boat, wrapping it with styrofoam, shipping it back, put it at Home Depot. You buy it and you use it once a year to clean the leaves out for 5 minutes. That is nuts.
Well, you're onto something there, because the rental economy or the reuse economy is the service. Retail as a service is really kind of taking off, right? It's going to be,
and we're starting to find retailers now.
It's that intermediate.
They want to try before you buy. Well, we can do that. They might have a current, say, a Home Depot has a certain number of things that are out there for use. Maybe they have a whole bunch of more stuff that they could do. Maybe some of the returns that come back, rather than going, what the heck do I do with these, become inventory for Ruckify.
Interesting.
And so it's caught us off guard. Things like pawn shops. You know what a pawn shop is? It's a big, huge sea of unused or underused things waiting to be monetized.
Right. Fair enough.
And so there's a whole bunch of retail wake-up.
So let's get back to cannabis in Canada for a bit with your experience. Let's imagine I had a magic wand and I could make you the Canadian cannabis Czar. What are the first three things you would do in Canada?
I should probably, you should almost say thank you for putting me in charge, but then I would use one of my three wishes. What we haven't done great as a country is we made really fantastic rules. We led the world. But then we didn't tell our trade commissioners, high commissioners, ambassadors, we want to own this space. So try to drag every health official from every country back to here to see how we've done it. Try to get them to see our companies. Try to find where the regs are and get our companies aware of them. We've been very reluctant as a country to win globally rather than just regulate and do okay locally.
Right.
Second thing is kind of that alignment. Tell me which university in Canada is the center of excellence for medical research in cannabis, for extraction research on cannabis, for plant genetic and evolution. No, there's not. So there's not yet a whole series of university and academic institutions pushing this together. Maybe the final thing I do is a lot more recognizing that this has to be put on the same footing as packaged alcohol. So right now, if you buy cannabis, you're supposed to go home and sit in your closet and consume it or something. People want to have safe spaces that are fun, and they go together and they buy the products there and they pay a premium because they're not buying the product, they're buying the space in the product.
And I guess the good news is Ontario has put forward a proposal for cannabis lounges, right? So it's first small steps. It's
starting to open up, but I'm saying if I get to be the recipient of your magic wand's power, I want it now. And the reason I want it now is it brings forward the opportunity to get rid of the illicit markets because they can't supply those places.
Right.
It turns it into a discussion about the ills of the other product. And I think it just says Canada's leading. Now the rest of the world will copy. Who copies us? Maybe Germany. If Germany copies Canada, what happens? Canadian companies win in Germany.
Right.
And so I think those three things in sort of concert together would create it so that we could actually have a generation of win from cannabis for Canadians.
Well, it's no surprise that you've got a bias for action. Who do you think, how long do you think Canada has as kind of a window of opportunity? It feels like it's going to close pretty quickly. I'm not sure which country could could leap ahead of us. I think of Mexico, who could make a gangster play, so to speak, and bring in the cartels and put together something. I mean, what do you think?
I think so. There's a bunch of rules still that exist saying that you can't move cannabis around for a party. You can't export it, can't import it. Very difficult to even move it for medical. So really what you have to say is what you're moving around are brands and ideas. And so who can catch brands or ideas? Well, it depends how quickly you're making your ideas into claims of intellectual property and your brands into global ones.
Right.
The sleeping giant is in the 2020 election, there's going to be a rational debate at some point about what the Americas do. Because it's federally illegal in the U.S., which means they have no scale and no chance of being a winner globally.
I've always said, America's developing this cannabis FOMO. They see, hey, aren't we the apex capitalists? Why are we getting beat out by Canada?
So I guarantee
eventually that's going to catch
there is
up,
a trump card that's going to be played that says, I'm going to let the states do what the states want to do. So if they say that it's federally okay to have, state says it's okay to have a party of medical, then it's federally okay. You just can't leave the state with it.
Interesting.
If they start to do that, you start to see scale.
Right.
And the only reason they're going to do it is no politician really is for or against anything except for getting elected.
Yeah.
And this polls really well.
And it's so interesting because it's kind of gone sideways in California. If you look at a big state, right? The municipality, it's just, you look at the state and about half the municipalities don't participate, and it's just a gong show, or a bong show, as our friend Tony Chapman would say.
Yeah, but remember, it was a couple years ago, and they said, we've had this decision, and we're going to make cannabis in California recreationally available. My reaction is great. Now you're going to get 2 new customers.
Right.
Because for 15 or 20 years, everybody had a medical permit who wanted cannabis.
Right.
And so California and British Columbia are the 2 toughest markets, and everybody gets wrongly excited about them. There's tons of illicit product. I think there's 40,000 plus producers in California. The further east you go in America, the more tightly regulated. As soon as you're east of the Mississippi, you're into very tightly regulated places, which are much easier for business.
Yeah.
And so I think California and British Columbia are tough markets because of the long history. It's much easier. Like on the East Coast, somebody shows up at an apartment and brings marijuana. Somebody says, yay, you brought marijuana.
Right.
On the West Coast, they say, what kind is it? The cultivar's name. There's a very big difference. And then that's just dried cannabis.
Very sophisticated markets, right? As you say.
But now science leads to new products. And when the new products hit, and I can tell you, the cannabis beverages are going to be great. Because you and I are both not old, but we're not young. And we both could go to the gym more, but we don't.
Right.
Cannabis beverages are terrific because they'll have no calories, none, no carbohydrates, moderate or no drug-on-drug interaction, which essentially means you can have fun, not have all the ills.
Right.
Non-dehydrating, non-depressant.
Right.
Like you might actually, I can have a couple of beers and stay awake past 9.
And it's a category where it's hard for the black market to compete because it's hard to make these beverages. We see that today. Right?
Yeah, and we're going to call it illicit market always going forward because one person pointed out to me, said, black market, black sheep, all these things are just slang down pushes. We call it illicit market. And the illicit market won't have these products because that takes about $40 million to set up a great canning line.
That's right. Make a tasty beverage, right? It's got to be a tasty beverage, right?
And, at the end of the day, you can go to the illicit market and probably buy some ground hamburger a bit cheaper, but you're going to die. There's a certain point in time where these beverages get sophisticated. They also start to become more distilled if it had, for example, pesticides, fungicides, or herbicides.
Sure.
You concentrate those down. So what you really want is clean and safe.
That's always seemed to be the contradiction of consumers. I'm going to start talking about retail. But the contradiction is consumers are so focused on health and wellness and sustainability, yet, they're consuming billions of dollars of product that is, who knows where it's made, really. That has no
That's the government's job to do education. Like, if I could run a retail supportive campaign, I would test all of the illicit cannabis I could find, and I know I'm going to find quite a bit of fecal chloroform on that cannabis. And then I would run a campaign saying, do you want shit or good shit? And everybody would start to realize, you know what? When I buy from a regulated channel, I have certainty and safety.
Seed to sale, right?
So vape crisis was not vape crisis legal. It actually caused, in the rebound, legal vapes to increase their sales and illegal ones to decrease because some dummies in the illegal market were using, vitamin E acetate and other things as cutting agents. That's not smart.
Well, I'm going to count that as your bonus wish after the 3, so that's your 4th. I'm a retailer, so we'll talk about bonuses. So, good segue into a question about retail. So, Ontario, for example, is opening up. Alberta is full steam ahead. Yep. What's your advice to retailers? I talk to them all the time, and they're now starting to get past the I'll just sell whatever is available. And they're going to have to start competing with each other and having a differentiation and all those great things that retail does. What's your advice on how to win as a cannabis retailer?
Target rich customers. Like, I sounds really, obvious, but if you're 50 to 70 years old and walk in the store, does that store say, I love this store? Do the people working there somehow correlate with you? Like, I walk in the store and I like people with pink hair, but I don't have pink hair. I have very little hair. What I want is some kind of, they need to recognize that the best customer, especially those drinks that I mentioned, why do you think they're going to be great for that cohort? That cohort right now, all of them are taking a pill for something and they're worried about drug on drug.
Right.
If you've got that gone away and they're worried about getting fatter, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I keep seeing a lot of stores opening where they're already trying to sell to existing cannabis buyers who already have a guy. Why are you doing that?
In other words, extracting, so to speak, from the illicit market.
So find all new customers. Find people who have not been buying cannabis and sell them products in an informed way that they would not choose to go somewhere else. And so it's sort of like when the illicit market was available to us at the beginning, 2014. I said to our folks, go and educate doctors. I want new customers. I don't want people coming from the other system, because people will remember incorrectly how good the bad old stuff was.
Sure.
I don't want to be in that game.
Interesting. If people want to learn a bit more about you or get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Well, it's kind of like the vanity plate in Ontario, except you can read mine. It's brucelinton.com.
Okay.
And so I just put that up because I had the domain for the last 15 years or 10 years or something.
Right on.
And I'm trying to keep it current.
Well, thanks for spending time with the Voice of Retail. It's a real treat to meet you, and congratulations on your success, and much success in the future.
Well, let's both keep our hustle.
Well, thanks to Mimi and Bruce for being my guests in this episode. Now let's hit the highlights of the retail news in Canada and around the world with retail this week for the week of March 9th, 2020. Well, to say that we're in historic times, fast-moving, fluid situation is an understatement. I mean, with the coronavirus and the impacts on the coronavirus around the world and now in Canada, it is really new ground. So stay tuned. We're going to be covering retail as it exists, and we're really going to get into the whole impact on retail and what's happening in the Voice of Retail in the weeks and months really to come. But there are other things going on in retail. I'll get to more about the coronavirus in a little bit. We've got now a special section in retail this week, e-newsletter, and here on the episode that will be dedicated to the top stories. You know, how do you pick a top story in retail? There's so many, the impacts are so wide. But I try and find some of the most top 5 interesting stories, so to speak, on retail. But there's, of course, impacting on every single industry that we're in. But first of all, some great news from Red Deer, Red Deer's PV Industries, which acquires Ace from Lowe's. So this from the Red Deer Advocate. 107 stores. So they're going to be expanding. Great operators, PV Mart, TSC stores as well. And that's not the shopping channel. That's TSC. The Tractor Supply Company is what it stands for, but TSC stores. Great retailer, really focused on the farming community. And as such, they're really going to become so dominant in that space. So congratulations to the folks at PV. News from Canadian Tire. They appoint the great Greg Hicks as the new CEO. It's fantastic. I met Greg first through Retail Council of Canada when he was a top merchant. Became the president of Canadian Tire Retail now. To see him rise to the CEO of the organization, I know Canadian Tire is in great hands. So congratulations to Greg Hicks. And we wish him everything and all the best. From a global search, actually, according to Maureen Sabia, the chairman of Canadian Tire. Purdy's Chocolatiers from Vancouver, best kept secret women-powered company. This is from the Financial Post. 65% of the Purdy's factory kitchen employees are women, account for 87% of the shop's teams. 63% of the Purdy's executives are women. I've met Karen Flavel, many of the team there. They're just a fantastic group. Michelle as well. From the marketing team. So Purdy's chocolate, and to boot, fantastic chocolate. So if you haven't for some reason had the opportunity to try Purdy's chocolate, run, don't walk, because it is really fantastic products. Congratulations to the Purdy's team. Opening date, store updates for Montreal's luxury retailer Holt Renfrew Ogilvy. So they're kind of Ogilvy's is a long-standing Montreal retailer. It's Holt Renfrew Ogilvy will complete its complete on April 10th. Store is underway, construction underway on St. Catherine Street at Rue de la Montagne in the existing Holt Renfrew store. That was at 1300 Sherbrooke Street since 1937. Let's see what else. Metro plans to open an $8.3 million sustainable store in Montreal area. Fantastic opening there, and that coincides with also some tremendous investment. I think over $400 million investment in warehousing that Metro is doing. What else have we got? Must-see video. 66% of Canadians fear COVID-19 economic impact. Well, I think that would be close to, that was from Thursday. I think that would be close to 100% with news now that our Prime Minister's wife is now has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Our Prime Minister now in quarantine. So we, of course, wish them health and fast recovery. Inside, let's say independent retailers, inside the fight to save Toronto's beloved children's bookstore, Maples Fables. Eleanor Lefebvre, a huge supporter of Retail Council of Canada, 32-year-old bookstore, Eleanor, and I met years ago. A fantastic retailer, has really done well in terms of positioning the store through very tough times, whether it's big box bookstores or Amazon or whatever you want to call the challenges, and now the rent's going up, and so something crazy amount like 40%. So good luck to Eleanor as she, the community rallies behind her as they have what she describes as frustrating lease talks with a Maple Venture Properties, the new owners since last year of her property. Continuing on that theme, why so many Metro Vancouver retail spaces are closing up shop? This from Vancouver Courier. That's a theme. I actually did an interview with the Toronto Czar this week, should be out probably tomorrow, and just talking about the three factors that make it very difficult for local retail, only one of which, and it in some ways it's the constant is the challenge, the competitive nature of retail, big box, online shopping, all that stuff. But the other two factors are the rapid increases in property taxes and rapid increases in rents. Those two both stem from the potential use of that property. So challenging days. It's challenging days here, Montreal, Vancouver. Local gaming shop. This is from Calgary Journal. Get this. The changes in the payment schedule on his rent, it's up 65% increase. It's cost him an extra $70,000. It went up, his rent, went up 25% after that. So now I'm paying as much per month as I used to pay per year when they first moved there. This from the gaming local gaming shop in Calgary. Really just stunning numbers. Very tough. Ottawa's used bookstore find ways to survive in the digital market. Just such a great group of entrepreneurs. And smaller southwestern Ontario is starting to get cannabis stores. So continued theme that cannabis is opening up across Ontario. Now you're seeing them moving into St. Thomas and Stratford. I'm sure they have a great consumer base in Stratford, Ontario. Retail around the world. Article from Retail Dive on why lenders still love retail, bankruptcies and all. Just talks about the asset-based loans that are financing retailers. The yin and yang of that. How Talbot's embraces omnichannel sales. Talbot, this from the MIT, and Talbot has really stepped forward and had such a great channel. I mean, now of course Rob Schmaltz, who I interviewed a couple of episodes ago, was the leader over at Talbot and really set them up for success. So it's a great article to read at MIT. Stitch Fix. Now, Stitch Fix was a favorite of mine, continues to be a favorite of mine, but oh boy, all the stocks this week are getting hammered. The Stitch Fix is taking probably a disproportionate amount of hammering. Their price, at least from their stock point, has just collapsed from. I remember I owned some and sold some in around the $30. Is now down to in the low teens. And I guess the concern is that there's many people who have had their fixes, so to speak, clothing shipments as they're going to be, so there's no growth left in the company. I'm sure that's the case. This from CNBC, but we're going to go see these tough days for Stitch Fix, which I think is Katrina Lake and her team do a fantastic job, so we wish them well. The coronavirus threatens the American Dreams retail launch, so this big mall is having a bit of a choppy time, bad luck as it would from a timing perspective, so they might be delaying some of their openings, but pushing ahead. Burlington Stores shuts down e-commerce. So that's interesting, right? So everyone thinks, I guess, from the outside that e-commerce is the magic bullet, or at least a necessary ingredient to be successful in retail. But Burlington is proving otherwise, and I guess that would hold true if you look to the right home in our Canadian market. You look at TJX with Marshalls, HomeSense, and Winners, and little or no e-commerce at all, and very successful. So e-commerce not the answer to everything. Now, I mentioned we've got a COVID-19 retail news and updates section now we've launched in retail this week. course, if you are a member, if you're looking for resources for the COVID-19 as a retailer, go to retailcouncil.org, member resource page. And if you're not a member of Retail Council of Canada, now is the time. Now, it may seem now is the time to be buckling down, and if you're not a member, you may be saying, why would I join now? The times are a bit tough. That's exactly when you need to be a member, and that's when you need, as a retailer out there, if you're not a member in Canada, to support the Retail Council of Canada and the work that they will do in advocating on behalf of the retail industry. These are fast, dynamic, and very challenging times, and this is when you need the strong association that Retail Council of Canada is. In fact, that article just came out in the Globe and Mail interview with Michael LeBlanc from Sobeys, talking about how it is the Retail Council of Canada, Deanne Brisebois, who can pull and lead on behalf of the industry. The individual retailers, big grocery retailers have their own voice, of course, but together make sure that we feed the nation during the COVID crisis. So join Retail Council of Canada if you're not a member today. A couple of 4 or 5 articles from Financial Post, how the coronavirus could wreak havoc on the global supply chain. We talked about that about a month ago, right? So we had an entire episode dedicated to the retail supply chain. Those things are starting to, I wouldn't say starting to become true, but starting to reveal themselves. So we're going to, continue to cover that issue, as I said. Business in Vancouver, BC Pharmaceuticals' latest hit. Now, this is interesting because this is from Clint Malman, who leads London Drugs, and he's actually talking about that it's the direct imports from China. He's not worried about as much, lots of things to worry about, but it's the pharmaceuticals piece. The third has attracted, he talks about personal electronics, direct imports, but it is these pharmaceuticals from China and the ingredients that is really needs some focus. And that from Business in Vancouver, and that's something the Retail Council of Canada certainly will be raising the profile with the federal government. Again, join Retail Council of Canada. Implications for business. This is a McKinsey article, and I really can't recommend it highly enough because McKinsey does a great job of layering a strategy view or lens on the coronavirus and gives you a range of scenarios and outcomes. And it's a really, of course, really fantastic read. And they're going to update it on an ongoing basis. So check that out in the link into or go on to the McKinsey site. Italy, of course, you probably all know, but they've shut down all their shops except for pharmacies and groceries, which, again, back to that Michael LeBlanc article and something we'll be talking about. Retail Council will be talking about the federal government declaring them essential services. Feeding the nation and keeping the nation healthy is an essential service in these challenging times. That from the Globe and Mail. Coronavirus poll. Quebecers aren't stockpiling as much as their fellow Canadians. Just under 40% of those surveyed in Quebec said they were concerned about becoming sick. 52%, most, that's 52%, said a fear that their friends and family would get sick, but only 8% of Quebecers said they were buying extra food and household items compared to a Canadian average of 17%. That from the Montreal Gazette. So stay tuned. Lots of more great interviews that I've done. I'm actually moving forward and only doing remote interviews, but I've got lots in the can, so to speak. So the Voice of Retail will continue unabated and will continue to cover the retail industry. So stay tuned. I'll probably do some special episodes as the situation evolves, and retail is going to have, to say the least, an interesting year. So there you have it. Well, that's a wrap on this edition of The Voice of Retail. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, your favorite podcast platform. Please, please, please rate and review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of Mimi Lam Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a great week and stay healthy.